Welcome to our Facebook Live this morning. I have to confess, I feel really excited and a bit naughty, a bit like the head teachers away. This is the first time I've led a Facebook Live in Chris's absence, and it's really exciting. Hi, Lindsay, how are you?
Morning, I'm good. How are you, Kelly?
Really good, really good. It's lovely to actually have a bit more of a cool breeze going on like these last couple of days. It's all been quite hot and it's nice and cool and chilled. Hi everyone watching. I've got your comments on next to me. If I look away from the screen, it's because I'm just catching up with everybody on the comments. Let us know where you're from, where you're watching from. Is anybody watching whilst on holiday somewhere abroad? Now, that would be real commitment to the sunshine cause. Let us know where you're watching from. Come say hi in the comments. We'll get going with the main sort of bulk of what we're talking about really shortly. I just want to make sure that we give people enough chance to, log in and make a cup of tea and, all of that sort of stuff. Have you had a nice holiday, Lindsay, so far?
Yeah, it's been lovely. I've been a bit naughty this summer. I've been away twice just for staycations in the UK, and yeah, just catching up now with life and washing and trying to get a tent dry.
Absolutely, yeah. I love a good staycation. It's great. So everyone joining us, we've got people from Leicester, we've got people from North Somerset. Oh, I grew up in Somerset. So hello, Wendy in North Somerset. Kingston upon Thames. Hi, Fiona. Lovely to see so many people joining. My name's Kelly Jarvis. I'm head of advocacy and consultancy here at Sunshine Support, and I'm joined with the fabulous Lindsay Galley, who is an amazing ex-head teacher from West Sunshine is best from Derby. So we'll get going in just a short while. We've got lots of people watching, which is so great. We're going to be talking today about parent-teacher relationships in SEND. So it's a really useful topic, we feel, when we're thinking about how we want our school year in September to start. We want that really positive year. And what we'd like to do today, I'm hoping, and let us know in the chat, have we got any teachers watching or educational professionals? Because that's both our backgrounds and we love it when we have teachers watch. It's just so, so good. Morning, Lisa from Worcester. Morning, Claire. Morning, Claire. Morning, Rachel from not so sunny Wales. Got people in Norfolk and Derby. Gosh, so all around the country. That's what we love. So I think we should get into it because we've got lots to talk about today, haven't we, Lindsay? Uh,
Yeah.
have. So, Lindsay, how about hand over to you first of all, and you can tell everybody a little bit about your background and what has sort of brought you to Sunshine.
Oh, right. Well, I've been a teacher for 26 years, and I've always been an infant teacher. So my heart is with the little ones, but I am now a mum of a teenager. So I've been sort of through the school system as a parent too. And then for the last 10 years of my teaching career, I was a head teacher of an infant school, an absolutely amazing place, which was a brilliant place to work. And then met Chrissa because her children attended the infant school that I was head of. And as my son sort of started his learning journey through school, it became apparent that he was finding it trickier than I would have expected him to, or that school would have expected him to. And I suppose from just being a parent, I became a SEND parent when my son started school. And really, other than close friends and family that I'd spoken to, I didn't really have anybody to talk to. And it's quite strange being a SEND parent and working in schools. So I approached Chrissa for some advice, some support. I felt really lonely and didn't really know, other than lots of reassurance that I got from my lovely friends and family about it will be all right, it'll be okay. I just needed somebody else that wasn't quite so close to talk to. And Chrissa and I, have just bubbled along in the background with a professional and parent teacher sort of relationship. And then the opportunity to work at Sunshine Support arose over the last 6 months, I suppose. And here I am, really excited to be working as part of the Sunshine team with the background that I've got and with the knowledge as a SEND parent too that I bring to the table. And yeah, so excited about where it goes from here.
Oh, we are so excited too, honestly. When you first started, we popped on social media that you were going to be starting, and we had a huge outpouring of positive comments from parents about your appointment. And it was parents that spanned years. And it really showed that when you were a teacher and a head teacher, that you must have really prioritized the well-being of parents and those really high quality relationships because you're so fondly remembered. And in some cases, as I said, years later. So, could you tell us a little bit about why, as a professional, you place so much value on nurturing those relationships with parents when there are so many other responsibilities that educational professionals have to fulfill, like in their daily sort of life and job?
Well, I've been thinking it wasn't really a conscious decision. I think it's just who I am. Relationships are really important to me, but I never felt that school was anything else other than part of a bigger community.
Mm.
It doesn't stand alone. It's that idea that it takes a village to raise a child is what I wanted to feel like. I was fortunate to live in the community where I worked as well, and that village was raising my own child. So I needed it to be the same for everybody else. I think that's where that idea came from. And I've
That
always seen, sorry, go on, Kelly.
No, I was just going to say that's incredible because I don't necessarily think that's every parent's experience. And to have that village sort of, even in a big school, you can have that because it's about the priorities, isn't it? It's about prioritizing. Actually, the only way we're going to get good outcomes for this children is if we are a team, is if we do work collaboratively. And if there's constant conflict and or a lack of communication, then that village just sort of crumbles, doesn't it, really? But anyway, carry on. What were you going to say?
It just and we did, it's not a small village school where I worked. We had 120 reception children join us every year. It's the biggest infant school, or it was, in Derby City. So I'm not talking about a little school where it may be easier to have that sort of community feel. We worked really hard at it, and I suppose I've always seen the education system as part of a concentric circle organisation, that every layer is wrapped around the child. The child is in the very center of that, and the parents and their extended family and school staff are wrapped around that child, and then the school comes beyond that, and then everything else sits outside of that. I've never seen school as a hierarchical system where it's been top down, and I think there is a danger that it doesn't set the right tone if we start to think about, well, who's in charge and who's above. That sort of the child being at the center, and then obviously the circle outside of that is the parents, and we're enveloping that. And as you've said, I just don't think schools can work if the community and the parents are in a constant battle. Everyone's unhappy then, and then ultimately that's the children, because they very quickly pick up that whatever this is, it's just not working. It doesn't feel right. And also, as a school, your parent community is one of the biggest resources you've got.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to grow that and to nurture it along with the children? So I suppose, having to think about it, that's me putting it into words. But at the time, I don't think I really thought about it. It
Yeah,
just was me.
Well, funny you should say that. There's somebody in the comments who said, Emily, who said it's not that hard if you are a good person who's open to being curious and listening properly. We need more head teachers who have these qualities and who prioritize families. And that's exactly what you mean, isn't it? It just sort of, it's part of what being an educator and then a leader of educators is all about. And it's really interesting that we're saying there about how the parent community is the greatest resource, because one of the main problems that we find sunshine families face when they come to us is feeling unheard by professionals, or having doubt cast on the things that they know best about their children. And some parents find themselves having to fight for, say, provision on their child's EHC plan to be delivered properly. And that shouldn't even be a fight parents should have. The responsibility about making sure that provision on that plan lies very squarely legally with the local authority. But it's a really long, draining process to ensure that parties are actually held to account, and parents may not know how to do that. So just thinking of that, if a SEND parent came to you as an educator and they had concerns about their child's needs or the support they were getting at school level, or even concerns that their EHC plan wasn't being delivered properly, what should those parents expect the school to do? How should the school respond to that sort of question and query?
I think as a parent, first of all, is get your approach right. And I think the easiest way to do that is to, I've coined a phrase of being curious rather than furious. And I think if you're curious about, if you're curious about why something isn't happening, or it appears that it's not happening, it's a better approach than just being cross. Because there's an impact on you as well as the person you're about to speak to if you're going already feeling angry and frustrated. So I try to get the mindset of, I wonder why this isn't happening, or I wonder why school isn't able to do this, or I wonder why my child is talking about this not happening, rather than just I'm angry that this is not being done. So I think that's probably the first thing to get the approach to school right. Go asking questions rather than making demands. I think in terms of basics, follow the right procedures, because I think you're always going to get batted around if you haven't gone to the class teacher first and then the SENCO, and you followed that, for want of a better way, the complaints procedure. You're always going to get batted away, and then that adds to your frustration because it's taking you longer to get the answers that you want. But I think as a parent approaching a school, you have the right to be taken seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have the right to be listened to. And you have the right to ask, well, what needs to change? Why isn't this happening? Or can you find out? Because you might actually be talking to somebody who's not there in the classroom and doesn't actually know whether it is or isn't happening, whether, what the barrier might be if something isn't happening. I think you have the right to know who's going to investigate the issues that you've raised, and when they'll get back to you. Don't don't let there be drift, because I think that just adds to your feelings as a parent of frustration. If whoever you've spoken to needs a week to find out, to talk to all of the people that are involved, give them that week, but then don't let there be drift on that. And then you're entitled to feedback around the issues that you've raised. What's not working, what is working, what needs to change. Because I don't think anybody goes to work in a school with the mindset that I'm going to go and do a bad job today. There are going to be reasons that are getting in the way. And I would suggest that the vast majority of that is going to be capacity. And sadly, that's a systemic problem. It's going to be about money, resources, most of the time. And actually, as a parent and a school, you can work together to sort that problem out rather than fighting each other. It might just be that you call an interim review on your EHCP and you look at how the resources can be more clearly worded within the EHCP so that you can apply for more funding, or that's quite easy to do, and that's where you can come together to solve the problem rather than being butting heads with what's going on. You might find it's a capability problem, and that's not saying that it's someone who can't do their job properly, but it might just be somebody who hasn't had the right training. And again, you can go back to that EHCP or back to, what does this member of staff need so that we can break down that barrier. And then there'll be other odd things. There'll always be a curveball in there as well. But I would say most of the time, it's about capacity and very rarely probably about capability.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And speaking as another head teacher, so weirdly, we know Chrissa in similar ways. Like I was also a head teacher that worked with Chrissa. One of the things that I encounter in my role now at Sunshine, and something that makes me really sad, is when I go in and support families with schools and say annual reviews and things. On occasion, and I do mean on occasion, because in fact most schools are really welcoming, on occasion, there's a feeling of a little bit of mistrust about, why is this parent asking for more? Why is this parent telling us that we're not doing enough? We are so overstretched. We're on our knees. The class teacher, who's also the Senko for 2 days a week, is crippled with a workload. And that's just a sort of fundamental misunderstanding, of what's going on. Because actually, as you say, we can make the best team, parent, school, and potentially possibly an advocate too, because all we're trying to do is make a plan so robust that it can't not be funded properly from a legal perspective. And then what that brings the school is potentially paid for CPD, so continuing professional development and training, paid for personnel and resources that they wouldn't otherwise get. And one of the things that really worries me, and this comes down to, again, I think different messages that schools get, or the lack of training that new staff get about SEND, new teachers coming into the profession, there's not much training about SEND at all, is we get told things like, well, the local authority have told us that the funding is capped at amount. £8,000, we can't have any more than that. Or the local authority has told us that this plan doesn't require funding. And then you pick it, you go through it, you pick it out, and you say, well, there's some one-to-one work there, and there's a piece of equipment there. And, you pick it out and you start doing a really good costed provision map. And I see my job very much as a best friend to Senkos, not an enemy, because I can alleviate the workload of those. I can do the costed provision map. I can sort out the wording on the plan. After a review, I can go through a plan and annotate it with all the evidence that we've got for the Senko and just give that to the local authority and say, hey, look, this is how the plan's got to be finalised. So it is possible. And interestingly, actually, we've got some webinars coming up. We've got a 17th of September EHC webinar coming up about basically a huge overview of what the EHC process is about and how to obtain it. And that's a really good one to come to if you are in the position where you're talking to your child's school about like school level provision and whether that's enough. And the school is saying, we don't really see some of the problems that you see, so we wouldn't get funding. There's not enough evidence. Your child doesn't have a diagnosis. And all of that is just not accurate. So if that's you, come to that EHC webinar on the 7th. It's really useful. And then we've got another one. We've got an in-person workshop on the 10th of October at our hub in Derby, where it's a whole day of EHC extravaganza. And I'm leading that one. And we will teach you how to obtain this evidence and write your EHCP. So to go back to something you said, Lindsay, about like just record keeping and things, one of the things that I always say to parents it's absolutely okay to expect is good records from the school. So primary schools in particular are often are incredible at mopping up around the child. They will just look after children who are dysregulated. They will just put an adult with somebody. But then you unpick it, no one's writing it down anywhere. And then you start to write it down and you realize that there's loads going on. And one of the things I always say to parents is make sure that things are written down. And we've had some amazing comments actually, and Emily has put in the chat a really good reminder, which is make sure that when you've had a conversation with school, that you actively ask for an email to you, like a written sort of account of what you've talked about, because that's really important. So priorities, because you talked a little bit there about workload. I talked about workload for teachers, and teachers are of course human beings, and they are on their knees a little bit at the moment. For me, a big priority is interactions. So if a parent comes to a teacher, often that might be the only interaction that parent has that day outside of their own family, because that might just be how their life goes. A teacher, that interaction may just be one of 100 interactions they've had that day. And for me, a big priority has to be on making each of those 100 interactions meaningful. And this then creates a real sense of trust. So children go to school for most of their waking day. They are at school for most of the time that they're awake in the day. It is a huge responsibility for parents to entrust their child to someone else. And therefore, we've got to do some work to earn a level of respect. I mean, yeah, we deserve a level of respect, but we've got to earn that level of respect. And if that parent comes to us and says something to us, we've got to make sure that we give them a sense of, real priority. And that's quite hard to do when you've got a lot going on. But what you said before about just an email, just I've got your email and it will take me some time to reply, but I didn't want you to feel like you were being forgotten about. I'll reply by this day. Even that alone, really good thing. So you've got lots of hats. You've got a professional hat, you've got a send parent hat, you've been a head, you've been a teacher, and you're now doing this job. It's a lot to juggle. And a situation may be perceived differently by you depending on what hat you've got on. So just thinking about an education hat, just for those listening in the chat and wanting to know a little bit more about what goes on in a school, what challenges do you think educationalists face when they have to have difficult conversations with parents? Like, what support might a teacher expect?
I think my first thought is that difficult conversations are always easier if you've already built a positive relationship. So putting the groundwork in with every parent that you work with is going to, if you do get to a point where you have to have a difficult conversation, it's going to help. So welcoming parents at the door, making them feel like they're welcome in your classroom, in your school, learning their names as well as their children's names, all sorts of things are going to make that conversation easier if it happens. I think from a teacher's perspective, some of the things that make those conversations difficult are that the parent might not be ready to hear what you have to say. I've as a send parent, I've been on a journey with teachers and an excellent, outstanding head teacher of my son's school. But I wasn't ready to hear what they had to say at first. And I think that's really challenging, sort of navigating those conversations where you're telling parents something that they're not ready to hear, or something that they don't see at home, which was my experience of things, finding things more difficult in the school environment than the home environment, and sometimes often it's the other way around as well. So that's challenging. I think as a teacher, feeling insecure about your own knowledge of SEND, and that's okay, there's nothing wrong with that. We can't be experts in everything, and often your knowledge and understanding only comes when you've experienced it for the first time or the second time or the third time. So that again is, you might start a conversation, but then you're worried that you're going to be expected to have all of the answers or have all of the understanding to, hit the ground running with it. Or you might feel that the knowledge and understanding that you've got might already be out of date. The special needs world is changing so quickly. You might just feel insecure that you might not use the right terminology, because that's already out of date. And I think there's also a fear of the aftermath, like opening Pandora's box, what's going to happen next, because you do know as a teacher that parents, sit and they listen, and they're very polite and respectful. The very vast majority of people that ever come into school behave that way, but people do go away and think about what you've said afterwards. And depending how secure you feel as a professional, if they come back with further questions or anything more than further questions, that leaves you feeling worried about starting to have those conversations as well.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And a lot of what you're saying is being really echoed in comments. I'm going to address some of the questions, I think, because we've had some really, well, in some cases quite upsetting questions, because you just think, gosh, you should not be going through that. So hopefully we can give out some tangible tools that you can use when dealing with schools. Claire has asked, what do you do if the school are being dishonest? So they're not following the EHCP, and in this particular case, fabricating a year one phonics result. What advice would you give there? That's a hard one, isn't it?
That's a really hard one, because there's a lot to unpick. Because for a
Mm.
start, fabricating the outcome of any statutory test is really serious, and and that might be something that, again, the complaints procedure is on the school website. It is there for a reason. But it might be that depending who you believe has fabricated the outcome, you go above that point in the complaints procedure to raise that as an issue.
There's usually a SEND governor.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think the complaints policy will take 3 stages, but if the complaint pertains to a head teacher, which ultimately, if there's fabricated results, the buck stops with the head teacher. If you are concerned, if you have some proof that you can, you would need to do is have a look at the complaints policy. It will tell you that if your complaint is about the head teacher, then it usually has to go to either the pair of governors, or it will be some in the trust if it's a multi-academy trust, and go through that way. It's heartbreaking that you've had to even go through that and worry that that's happened. That's just not okay. We have another question. I mean, I have my thoughts about this one, because this is literally what I do day in, day out. On my son's EP report, it clearly states that the local authority should really consider a specialist school. Can I act on this? Well, yes, definitely. What you need to be looking at is when presumably your EP report feeds into a new EHCP, an updated EHCP. When you get your draft EHCP, which should always happen when a new EHCP is created, the section I will be blank, and you can then formally point that out to the local authority and say this is the route we need to go down. If you've had it done just within the existence of your child, so if you don't have an EHC plan yet, or the school has just had it done because they don't really think the EHCP is right, what you then need to do is call an interim review ASAP, because you have new evidence to feed into the EHCP. And that interim review, at that interim review, you formally ask for a change of placement. Now, if the local authority then disagree with that and they give you a new EHC plan, you can then look at appealing that decision. And we've got loads of content on the Sunshine Academy about that actual situation, how you can go about doing your appeal. Us as advocates, we help people through appeals all the time as well. So if that's a route that you might like to explore, or just give a shot. So a few more questions and then we'll move on with our conversation too. What should you do? Oh, this is one for you, Lindsay. Are you ready? I know you love questions being sprung upon you. It's your favourite. What should you do if you encounter a head who doesn't go in with the sort of understanding approach that you've got, who misunderstands underlying needs for misbehaviour and repeatedly tries to punish it? If the head, as in the individual at the top of the chain, can't or won't understand neurodivergence, what hope does the child have?
That's really difficult, because I do believe that the head teachers and the leadership team set the tone of a school, and without that it's really challenging. And I suppose it's to find a champion from within the staff. You know, there will be somebody there. It might be the Senko, who has perhaps a different understanding and can perhaps support you in raising those concerns that you have. Again,
It's hard as well, isn't it? Like if you're a teacher and you work in that sort of school and you've got the ethos where you understand that all behaviour is communication, if that isn't supported by the senior leadership, you have a real problem, because you are essentially stunted and stifled in terms of what you can do as a member of staff. And I've been there, and it's a really horrible place as a teacher. And in the end, I had to leave because the school didn't align with my values. It didn't align with my ethos, and I couldn't do what I knew. And I found that really impacted how I felt, like my integrity about my job. Thankfully, I then joined a wonderful special school where I feel like my career took off. So I've been a teacher since 2005, but I didn't join special education till 2011. And that was the moment where I felt this is what I thought I would be when I wanted to be a teacher, because I'm genuinely changing lives every day in a school that has the right ethos. And it's really important. Interesting what you said about Senko as well. We've had somebody in the comment explain that their school Senko operates in almost their own little bubble compared to teachers and support staff. And really worrying, this Senko operates as though the child isn't neurodivergent, or as though she can put it in a box and be typical whilst in the classroom. It's bizarre and confusing. This person is a post-16 teacher themselves, and she witnesses a complete lack of understanding and knowledge of neurodivergence. Navigates so stressful and exhausting, and teachers are results focused because they're forced to be. And then somebody else saying that the Senko doesn't believe in masks. What? It's really hard.
I've heard that. I've worked for Sunshine for a reasonably short amount of time, and the number of times I've heard that they don't believe me, or schools say, well, she doesn't do that here, so And I've been mulling that over for a long time, thinking, you know, why is it not okay to acknowledge the fact that we have different experiences of children? You know, that they can present differently in different places. Actually, we all can. And that, you know, the right to say, you know, I appreciate that you don't see this, but this is what we see at home, and I'm asking for help. And again, you know, it's kind of beyond me why we can't have those conversations as professionals and parents, and work together, because actually the only reason we're there in the first place is because of the child, you know. And if it's about them, let's pull together and work together with the information that we've got. And that comes from the home and the parents and extended family and school and clubs and everywhere else. And it builds the picture that ultimately we need that picture to start to move forward.
Absolutely. I think it's often about confidence. I feel confidence plays a huge role in relationships, and parents have the right to feel confident about the experiences their child has, like keeping high quality records and things. You've got to feel confident about what your child is receiving. But school as well have sort of a duty to play. Parents need to feel confident that the school understands that they may be contributors to a bucket that they may never see spill. And schools have to leave ego at the door. And there are a lot of egos in teaching. I say this all the time. I say that very fondly. I am a teacher. There are a lot of egos in teaching. It's just true. Everyone knows a teacher they've worked with. There's massive ego. And what we need to do is leave egos at the door and just accept, as you say, you may never see the bucket spill. That child may expend so much energy keeping that bucket from spilling that you never see it spill. But it's incredibly arrogant to assume that that bucket never. And we are all contributors to that bucket just by existing. You know, we're not deliberately doing things to make a child's bucket full. Sensory overload is one. If somebody is very sensory, just existing in the school environment fills their bucket. And unless we take, as educators, we take the time and care to understand how we empty that bucket in the day, we don't need to see the bucket spill, but we've got to contribute to knock holes in that bucket. And then parents can then report back to us. Actually, they usually take 2 hours to regulate after school. They're now taking half an hour. Like, wow, what are you doing? And then the school produces a really lovely, high quality record of trying loads of different things to see what makes a difference. And there are ways to do it without creating an unmanageable workload for teachers. What teachers need in that sort of instance is support from senior leaders to think creatively and think outside the box. I know it's all very cliche, but it's true. If you want to do something, I always used to do really weird things with my timetables, and my staff teachers used to think I was crazy. And they would be like, what do you mean? Let this child wander into my classroom without having done a lesson plan for him and without his shoes on. And I'm like, because this is the smallest, beginningest part of the battle. He's in a classroom. He's absorbing. Just let him be. He's really PDA. And they start off by thinking, this is mad. This is absolute bonkers. And then by the end, it's like, okay, I can sort of see where you're going from. But you only get that if you've got the support of senior leaders. So let's focus, shall we, on looking forwards and driving for improvement, because this is what Sunshine is all about, isn't it? It's about collaborative work to make things better for young people and their families. Let's focus on how to nurture those positive relationships. What would be your key three, like three non-negotiables a school must do if they want to create that culture of positive parent-school relationships?
Well, I think I've already talked about my top one, which is acknowledging that you have different experiences of working with the same child or young person, and that that's actually extremely common, and acknowledging that it takes a huge amount of courage to ask for help, especially if you're on the side where, you know, that there isn't a lot of presentation of needs in school, but there is a high level of need at home. To come into the school environment as a parent and to ask for help takes a lot of courage, and that deserves respect and acknowledgement and help and support when it's been asked for. Why wouldn't you? I think number 2 is it is absolutely okay not to be a SEND expert. You know, you can't be, not in mainstream education. It's, you know, your knowledge and understanding grows with the children that you experience in your class and that you teach. And to acknowledge the fact that at that moment in time, the parent is the expert in their child, and you're going to grow and learn together. And number 3 is communication, because I think so many frustrations with schools come about because communication isn't clear enough, isn't regular enough, has been agreed and then not stuck to, or isn't being done in the right way. So I think establish how you're going to communicate and then stick to it, and communicate the good stuff too.
Exactly that. And I think for me, it's about do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And if there is a life curveball that comes in your way, as a teacher, you often have them, then communicate that, because you're only a human being. So if you say, I'm going to reply to you by Wednesday, and then you end up catching some awful vomiting bug, and then you go back and you find that your classroom is in absolute disarray and you need to like sort it out for the young people that you work with, and you're not going to be able to reply by Wednesday, send a quick email and just say, hey, look, I'm so sorry. I was meant to reply by today. I haven't forgotten you. It's going to have to be tomorrow now. And it's just keeping that open communication. And I think that whole be curious, not furious, it applies to both parents and teachers. We always say be curious, not judgmental to teachers. And you're absolutely right, you don't have to be a SEND expert, but you do have to be open-minded. So if a parent comes to you, and often if parents have lived this SEND life, they've read up on stuff, right? They've gone and tried to work out what's going on. They've taken the time to watch some webinars or whatever, and they might come to you and they say, hey, I've looked at this thing, and it's a particular presentation of ASD called PDA, and you've got to think about your language and stuff. Now, as a teacher, you have two choices here. You go, oh, tell me more about that. That sounds like it could be really useful. I'd love to know more. If you found that this worked at home, let's talk about how we can mirror it in school. Or you can say, well, we don't see that. He does what we ask. I don't really think we need to do that. And the difference in those two will often be the difference between, you know, those parent-teacher relationships being successful or not. It will be the difference often between whether a child needs an EHC plan or not. Because if little things like that can be addressed, they may not escalate to the point where they need further support. So there's loads of reasons why you should do it. And I think language in general and environment, we've always got to be aware as teachers of, it's our territory, isn't it, the classroom? And parents have to come across a threshold and come into our world. And just little things like, don't sit behind your teacher's desk whilst a parent sits on a kid's chair in front of you. That's not equal. That's not welcoming. Think about, you know, coming out from behind your desk. Think about everybody sitting on the same chair. This sounds crazy and small, but it's really important. You know, also language that you're using. You're talking to fellow adults. You're part of the same team. So try to really think about your tone of voice, what you say, that, you know, don't belittle people by accident. Don't be sort of fiddling with your mouse and reading your emails with one eye whilst you're trying to talk to parents with another. That's another one that's a really big bugbear. So yeah, I think that there's some really good key points for teachers. What about parents though? So I think we touched on quite a few, and it's I just love it because I think we're really aligned. But we've talked about parents raising matters in a respectful way, in a timely way, in a way that generates a paper trail. I think it's also really important not to just contact the school for negative reasons either. Um, I have little children. So I have a 3 and a 3/4 and a turns 2 in a week. So they're teeny tiny. I'm quite fortunate in that they're in a very good nursery, which is just awesome. And I haven't ever had to raise anything really negative. But one thing I do try and do is just send an email every so often. I actually put it in my diary. How sad is that? I send an email every so often to just say, I noticed this thing did for my child. And I just wanted to say thank you. And from a parent's perspective, particularly if you've got concerns about your child, doing little things like that really helps that human sort of connection between teacher and parent. It levels the playing field. It allows everyone to feel, hey, we all see each other as humans, and can really, really help. Particularly if you're a teacher who's battling I know there are people in the comments who are saying the teacher's great, the Senko is great, the head of year is a nightmare, the head teacher is a pain. And it's like, if you're that teacher in that world, that email from a parent just going, hey, I notice what you're doing and it means a lot. I can't tell you how important that is. Did you find that with your staff, Lindsay?
I did, and I always said to parents that a handwritten note or a quick phone call or something that tells a teacher that they're doing a great job, or that you think they're fab, is worth far more than anything else you can possibly buy when the shops are full of thank the teacher gifts. I always, those handwritten things that come from somebody's heart just mean so much more, and that's all it takes. And that's about those relationships, being two-way and being based on positivity and mutual respect, and being about the children and not the politics.
Exactly right. And there's quite a lot of questions actually in the comments and things, which is sort of, it starts off as a relationship thing, and I think we've got some incredibly understanding parents who do that sort of thing, who've praised class teachers, who've praised Senkos, which is quite hard. I think when you're a parent, you're living that sort of send life and you're feeling really alone, like you were saying at the beginning, it's really lonely for you. But parents are incredibly understanding. But one of the big flavors of questions isn't so much about relationships, but it's actually about the frustration when you're saying to professionals, so schools, but also university professionals and things, you're saying, I need help, I can see things going on, and you get nothing back. You get told there's no evidence. You get told, you won't meet a threshold for an EHCP. You get told really random information, like the local authority only can give out 20 EHCPs a day. That's come up before. It's like crazy. And if you're a parent, that is exceptionally difficult to navigate, because not only are you having to deal with the fact that you're being told there is no help, but you're also having to try to work out whether what you're being told is actually true. You should be able to just have that confidence and trust. And I can see our lovely sunshine elves in the background have been replying to individuals and sort of saying, hey, look, get in touch with us if you're feeling a bit like gaslit, if you're feeling a bit, I don't think what I've been told about this EHCP is right. I don't think that, I'm just feeling something is off. Please do get in touch. Watch some of our content on, particularly on EHCPs, particularly on, there's a really good course in the Academy actually about parent-teacher relationships. So if you've listened to this and you're not part of the Sunshine Academy yet, sign up. It's like Sunshine for Netflix. There's loads of content that you can sort of binge and download and things. And there's new things being added all the time as well. There's a particular bit on parent teacher relationships in there. But then there's also content that answers some of the questions that we've been coming up that have been coming up in here about you know, what to do when somebody has no evidence. There is often a lot of evidence, and it's often because a lot of the evidence hasn't been written down in the right way. Anyway,
Or the person you're asking might not know what the evidence is, what is it actually asking for. And again, if you can, find out what it is that this evidence might look like from somebody like Sunshine Support, that you can go back to the teacher and say, well, actually, if you just did this, that would become evidence for me. So again, I think if you're really butting up against something and you're not getting any response or any answers, seek outside help.
Yeah, and I think home evidence is still evidence as well. I always tell parents to keep a log. Keep a log of how long things take you in the morning. Keep a log of how long things take you in the evening. Show school that log. Ask for that bucket emptier to be trialed in the day to see if that makes a difference to that. And that is all evidence in itself as well. Yeah, so I think this is such an important topic. Thinking about going back to school in September. We want the year to start positively for everybody. So if you've listened today and you think, I am a bit worried about September, I'd love to have a bit more of a specialist chat about my situation, probably that we couldn't necessarily do on this sort of forum. Please do get in touch. This is our bread and butter stuff. Lindsay works directly with schools, so she's going to be launching an incredibly exciting schools-based project in Derby to bring Senkos together, to give them a real support network to be talking about different things. So that's going to be incredibly exciting. But Lindsay also works with parents as well to help them sort of have negotiations and talks with schools that might be a bit challenging. So if that sounds like it's you, do get in touch with us. We can absolutely help. It has been an absolute pleasure this morning talking to you, Lindsay. I'm so excited you've joined our team. Thank you so much. It's just been great.
It's been a delight.
Yeah, it has. And thank you everybody as well in the chat for sharing your stories. There's some really, really sad situations of trauma, of gaslighting, of not being believed. And I'm just really sorry that that's what you're going through, because it's just not okay. And it's important that you know it's not okay, because you'll often be told that it's you and it's not you. And I hope listening to us today, both as ex-head teachers who have been classroom teachers as well, our whole career, we've focused on, prioritising that parent opinion, giving time, communicating. So there are teachers out there that do it, and it isn't you. So just remember that. Anyway, I think that probably concludes, because we're right around about an hour, which is you probably all terribly fed up of listening to us talk. So we will bid you adieu for now. But can't wait for the next one. We've got another Facebook Live, or I've got another Facebook Live coming up beginning of September. So we're talking all about sort of the return to school and stuff there. So please do swing by for that one. I can't wait to hopefully chat to lots of you then as well. And yeah, thanks very much, Lindsay.
Thanks, Kelly.
No worries. Take care, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day. Bye-bye.